I don't know if I don't know if I mentioned this during the day, during the playthroughs, but is it just me or does it look like the toads? Is it just me or does it look like that the toads wear Huggies diapers?
They've always had that.
They are baby toads.
I wonder if Miyamoto was actually drunk when he came up with the idea of putting Win in a game like this. Like, I understand innovation, but at the same time, he already knows this game is basically basically the 80s version of Wipeout or Takeshi's Castle.
I know there was already an NES game of Takeshi's Castle, but I would love to see I would love to see a video game remake of that TV show. I think it would sell, but that's just me.
Yeah, and it sucked that we didn't get Takeshi. Well, we got the parody dub called MXC back in '04.
Most extreme elimination challenge.
That was funny, but my god, was it cheesy.
Holy icon. Okay, first let me go ahead and just say what he said. I can play through Super Mario Bros. 2 Doki using exclusively one character per run. That's kind of required. When you pick a character, you're forced to stick with that one for the entire run. It was with the Yankee version that you got to choose between levels.
I would seriously hate to see you do Takeshi's challenge.
Um, I would say it's impossible. Unless you know Japanese and the style of singing in Japanese, it can't be done.
Yep. Plus, doesn't help that Takeshi Kitano, I believe his name is, was drunk, and the developers decided to keep the ideas he was suggesting.
It also didn't help that he despised gamers. he was kind of like Tanaka in the 1980s. He hated gamers and he wanted all of you to die.
Are you serious?
Horribly.
Because I remember the Game Center CX interview, but I don't remember anything involving that. Involving, oh, we hated gamers.
I might need to confirm that.
Like, I honestly thought he was a big freaking troll.
Yeah, I might have to ask Will about that next time I get a chance. Kaboot, why did he despise gamers? Why does anyone despise gamers? The answer would be subjective. It's different for everybody. I mean, shit, why did Tanaka hate gamers?
Just thought everyone should play the games the way he wanted them to be played and like what he liked.
I'm actually unfamiliar with this Tanaka guy.
I don't remember his last name. I just know that he was he was the lead developer for the original Final Fantasy XI.
Here's his Wikipedia page. Yeah, he was involved in a lot of the Final Fantasy games, actually.
Thinking about it, I probably don't want to know.
Well, the Wikipedia page, at least, is just basically a short bio. Oh, and, you know, what games he worked on and his role on the games, if it's known.
Holy Icon provides a clarification. Hiromichi Tanaka, aka Satan.
Wow.
Well, I don't know if you've heard of the Absolute Virtue boss from Final Fantasy XI.
I have, and I've listened to Jason talk about it.
I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but more for the guy who doesn't know what or who Tanaka is.
Yeah, I haven't played Final Fantasy 11, so I wouldn't know.
Okay, so at one point they came out with a boss called Absolute Virtue, which is supposed to be, the big end boss at the time. And every group that beat him or came close to beating him just didn't do the fight correctly. They either got him to glitch out or something to that effect, and they all got banned. And or if they got close to beating him, the server got shut down to prevent them from beating him.
Specifically, what happened was they would have a group of black mages stand in an inaccessible area of the map to Absolute Virtue and spam him with magic until he died.
There were another couple of methods that went, but basically
yes, that was one specific example.
And what turned out is that when people finally actually looked into it, there were no drop tables for Absolute Virtue.
Yep.
There was effectively not supposed to be a way for the players to actually beat him in the game.
The purpose of Absolute Virtue was to punish the players for defeating the jailers of the various aspects of Promethea. That was the original intent. Eventually, the devs gave in and decided to give him a method of being beaten and a drop table.
Well, and the thing is that when he was initially released, the devs and players couldn't beat him. The devs kept saying, "Oh yeah, no, there's a way to beat him. There's a way to beat him." You guys just don't know how to do it.
Yeah, They released this rather esoteric video showing a team of devs fighting him, and the clues you were supposed to pick up from that was whenever Absolute Virtue would do certain moves, a member of the Alliance would have to counter that by using one of their own 2-hour abilities to shut Absolute Virtue down.
What a prick.
I know because I was there. I played Final Fantasy XI for 7 years, between 2002 and 2009.
Yeah, I've only read about it, so...
Can you explain to me, Holy Icon, the purpose behind a battle that takes 12 hours to beat?
Well,
Of course,
there was... are you referring to Absolute Virtue, or are you referring to
Pandemonium
Warden?
Pandemonium Warden, I think that was his name.
The reason why it took 12 hours to beat Pandemonium Warden is because during his form shifts, he would recover health in the other forms. So, in order to beat him initially, the players would actually have to force him to cycle through his different forms to do damage to them faster than he would normally do on his own. Things like damaging certain parts of his body would cause him to cycle faster, so that you could damage all of the different forms. Eventually, they knocked that down a bit, but their original solution to prevent players from having like 12 and 18-hour-long battles where they were actually suffering from like nausea and like literally vomiting at their desks and passing out and things like that, was to make him depop after 2 hours.
Again, effectively making the boss unbeatable.
Right. Until people figured out, oh, you've got to do this and this and this to make him cycle through his crap. Then they decided to like lower certain requirements to do that and lower his natural cycle timer.
Kind of the point is they'd never actually wanted the players to win, because if they did, they'd have beta testers without knowledge of how to beat the boss try and beat the boss.
Yeah, Pandemonium Warden was designed to be beaten. They just failed miserably in their testing processes on that. Pandemonium Warden was the end of a series of like these notorious monsters that you would spawn and beat, and then take an item back, and then you'd get the next tier of an item to go out and trade to the world, beat the boss, and then come back and kind of like a monster hunting or something like that. They didn't really test that process, and it was added after the Treasures of Adargon was put in. So it was more like an update, and they sort of let the player base beta test it.
Which is never a good idea in an MMO.
No, no it is not. But Absolute Virtue definitely originally was not meant to be beaten. It was meant to show up after you'd finished off the last of the jailers, the Jailer of Love. And just, the thing about Absolute Virtue is, it didn't aggro. It just appeared. If you attacked it, it would destroy you.
But it's an MMO, people will inevitably want to kill the enemy, what they see as the enemy.
Yes. And it's not like Absolute Virtue was fought in a dungeon. The spot where you spawn, Jailer of Love, is actually out in an area referred to as C. It's an overworld map, part of the Chains of Promathia expansion. So you'd spawn like this massive notorious monster, and you'd have like this alliance, this over-alliance of about 30 players taking this thing down. Where anybody could just run up and watch. Like I said, it's not a dungeon. And then what would happen is after the Jailer of Love would go down, you'd have a chance of Absolute Virtue spawning. He wasn't guaranteed. And he would just kind of stand there. And eventually, someone would piss him off.
Was this another one where you had to like spend some ridiculously hard to get item to start the Jailer's thing?
ridiculously hard in the sense that you had to beat all the other jailers to get the items to spawn Jailer of Love. You'd start out the process by farming like the normally occurring monsters in the sea area. Then you would spawn the lesser jailers, and then you'd take their pop items and some other pop items and trade those out for the upper jailers, which are actually inside the palace. And then once you got those items, you'd come back outside of the palace and trade those items to spawn Jailer of Love.
The point is, it's a ridiculously long process to even have a chance at this.
The Jailer of Love fight would usually occur once every 2 weeks, with the alternating week being the lower and the upper jailer echelons. Meanwhile, other members of the Link Shell would be farming the sundry pop items. So it was a big coordinated effort. It was basically the same thing as Sky, only a little more involved.
Darth Andrea. Sounds like someone looked at the sleeper raid from EverQuest, one per server never respawned after Death Dragon, and said, "This is too easy, turn it up to 11.
Well, it does respawn, so it is technically easier. Though I do kind of have the opinion that someone Tanaka-like was involved in Dragon Ball Xenoverse's development. Because you have a random chance in the side missions. There's, the basic objective to, kill Goku in some of them, stuff like that. But then there's the bonus thing of, keep Raditz above 50% health. If you do that, sometimes an extra fight happens. Not always, sometimes. And that extra fight has a small chance of dropping some specific skill or item. So, for example, you can do the mission to potentially get the Super Saiyan skill to drop hundreds of times, getting the bonus mission every time, or bonus mission objectives every time, and just never having it drop.
When I first saw the advertisements for Dragon Ball Xenoverse, I thought it was going to be the US branding for Dragon Ball Online.
From my understanding, it's heavily based off of Dragon Ball Online, but it is its own game.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my personal issues with it is, again, the risks of, or the chance of some things just that don't drop.
Yeah, if it's primarily a single-player game, you'd think that the drop tables wouldn't be so
well.
Tanaka-ish.
It is single-player and multiplayer.